Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Quilt Tribe. Today we got 5 really fun blocks to do, and I'm so glad you're going to join me. So let's open up our patterns, and we are going to start with vast. And here is the vast, and I wanted it to look like stars in the sky. And I have some really good hints to get you going in this pattern so you don't get mixed up. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to line, it's based on 16 background squares. Just for my sample, I'm just going to show you 4 of them. And what I did was I went ahead and I numbered each one of these squares in the bottom right-hand side. So because when I put my different colors of fabrics on, I want to make sure I know which is 1, 2, 3, and 4 as they're going across, and I didn't get mixed up. So that's my first hint to you. The next thing we're going to do, we'll just go over the general construction of how the block works. So you're going to start out with your background, and you're going to do diagonal line sewing. So I just drew a diagonal line, and make sure that you indeed check and you have coverage that goes all the way to this corner before you trim anything off. Because once that's trimmed off, you have nothing to look at. So that's the first thing. We're going to sew it, and then we're going to trim it back to 1/4 inch. And from there, we'll go ahead and permanently press it. So that's one side. Now we're going to go ahead and do the other side with my next color. And so it's the exact same thing. I'm going to sew. And I'd like to point out, see, I sewed just to the left of that drawn line. That's going to allow for that fold. So you have enough fabric to make that fold. Okay, so then after that, once I know it's good, I'll trim it, and then I'll press it out. Okay, so here are all my patches. And what I wanted to do, I wanted to show you in that lower, see where that number is? That's how I make sure that I keep it in the right place. Now I piled these up in order, but you can kind of see where I'm going with this. All your diagonal line sewing is going to be going in the same direction. Can you see how it's always going this way? So I just go 4, and then I'll do the next 4. And the next 4. And then once I get these laid out, we can go ahead and I'll talk a little bit about my placement, how I place my colors. I did do all my marking with a friction pin. I would not use a permanent marker to mark that diagonal line because it might bleed through to the other side and then you can't get rid of it at all. So here it is. I started by laying out the 6 purples and the 6 yellows right in the middle. And the reason I did that, because it's going to create, if you look at the pattern, see how it creates these full stars? Okay, that's how you get that. And then once you got this main part to establish what colors you want to use, then you can just go ahead and fill in the outside edges. So I want to talk about sewing a little bit, because you want to have good match points. So if I was to sew 2 patches together and my seam was too wide, can you see how I have like a gap in there? Okay, that means your seam's too wide. If I have like a narrow seam, see how that, you can even tell that's narrow. I kind of exaggerated just to make my point. Can you see how that overlaps? What you're really looking for, you're looking for a good 1/4 inch. So when it opens up, you have a really good match point. Okay, so test 1, find out where it is on your machine, and then go ahead and sew them all. I wouldn't sew it all and then look, you know, sew 1 or 2 and then go. So that's like the only hint that I really have about that. So I think you'll enjoy it. Don't you like my piles? I spend all this time getting it all organized, and then there it goes. Okay, the next one we're going to do is a block called Teepee. And here's the block. It's just a 2-color block with a background. I'll go ahead and put it on the board. And the first thing we're going to do with our teepee block is we're going to make the 4 flying geese that go around the sides. So just a reminder, you're going to put the background centered right sides together to the dark and make your geese. So I know how to do that. So here are my 4 geese. We'll need those for later. And the next thing I'm going to do is work on the corners of my block. And to do that, I'm going to have 2 blue strips. One I'm going to sew to a background, and another I'm going to sew to a medium. Okay? We're just going to sew from end to end. And after it's sewn, we're going to go ahead and press both the seams so they go towards the blue. Can you see how it's pressed in that direction? Then we're going to go ahead and layer it right side up. The first one you're going to lay down has your medium on top and your dark going down. And then the next one, you're just going to layer it right sides together, and it's going to look sort of like what we're going to make is a 4-patch. And you see these seams will lock for you, good clean. And I really want to make sure that you keep this background seam closest to your body and it's going away from you. Because what we're going to do from here is we're going to go ahead and cut it into 4 equal sizes, and I'll tell you what size you need for what blocks you're making. And once it's cut, it'll be all ready just to take over to your machine, and you're just going to start sewing here. Your seam on top is going to be going up, the one underneath is going to be going down, and you're going to sew all 4 patches. Don't you wish you could do that this fast at home? All right, so here's my 4-patch, and I did want to point out that I did go ahead and I opened up that seam in the middle, and I swirled it just to reduce that bulk. You know, sometimes I do that and sometimes I don't, but for this block I went ahead and did that. And you're going to have a total of 4 of them, so we'll set those aside. Next thing we're going to do is make our 9-patch in the middle. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to sew these 3 pieces of fabric. Your medium, you have 2 mediums and 1 dark. Once it's sewn, it'll look like this, and I did press all my seams towards that middle blue piece. And then I'm going to cut it into 2 equal pieces. Now to make the middle of our 9-patch, I'll just set those aside. I'm just going to sew a dark to a medium and back to a dark, like that. Once it's sewn, I'm going to press my seams so they go towards the blue. That way when I go to sew these, I'll turn them upside down so you can see how they're all going to lock. See how those go in and then those go out? So that will give you a really good lock point. And once it's sewn, it's going to look like this. Okay? So there's our middle. And then I'm just going to surround our middle with our flying geese patches. You know, it's kind of tricky because I had to make the squares in the middle of our block a different size than the ones in the corner to get it to go with the geese. So that's like the tricky part of it. Then just the 4 corners go like this. All right? That's pretty easy, huh? Yeah, I like this block a lot. I think it's pretty. I think it would be a good repeat block. You know, block to block on a quilt. Okay, take that mess that I now have. So I got smart today. I put it on a piece of paper because I was dropping them on the way back over. Hey, it gets better every month. Every month. Okay, so let's turn our pages. And now we're to moccasins. Okay, and here's our block. It's got a nice big fussy cut in it, so it's a good opportunity to do that. Put it up on the board. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do to make our block is we're going to make half square triangles or piece triangle squares, whatever you want to call them. They're the same thing. And I'm going to make background with this light blue and background with a gray. And they're both done exactly the same way. We'll draw 1 line to make 2 squares and draw 1 diagonal line in each one of those squares. Sew a 1/4 inch from both sides. Once it's sewn, we're going to cut on all the drawn lines and we're going to square them up. And it'll tell you in the pattern what size to square them up to. The trick here is you want to pick one of your colors and you're going to press it towards the background, and your other color you're going to press it towards that medium. The reason being is when I sew these 2 pieces together, I want these seams to lock. Okay, so I'm just going to flip those right sides together and I'm going to sew. And I typically don't do this, but I really wanted to reduce the bulk, so I did press that center seam open, and it seemed to lie a lot better in your block. It was happier. Okay, So we're just going to lay our block out. I just had my nice fussy cut center. And then I have 4 of these that goes around this. And then I just decided to use this accent. It's kind of like an orange color, but I thought it pulled out some of the colors in the flower. And I think that turned out real pretty. So I'll just show you what it looks like with the rows sewn together since I have that. So the first and third rows, I press my seams towards the corners because that's the way they're going to want to go, right? And then the middle row, I press it towards the middle. That way you're never pressing your seams towards your piece triangle squares. All right? That's a pretty one, huh?
That's so pretty.
Pretty. Okay, back to my piece of paper. Hey, it works, right? Okay. Next one we're going to do is gourd. This one's really simple. You can reward yourself at the very end. You can do this one last. Or if you need a sense of accomplishment, you can do it first, right?
Yeah.
Which, knowing you guys, you like to do it first. So you can say, oh, look what I made. So all we're going to do is we're going to start out with a large square. This time we're going to draw 2 diagonal lines. And we're going to sew a 1/4 inch from both sides. And I'm just going to go ahead and cut this for you because I know this is a step that gets forgotten all the time. I started for my 9-inch blocks, I started with 2 squares that were 8 inches. And the first thing you're going to do, what's half of 8? It's 4, right? So we're going to cut it 4 inches that way. And we're going to cut it 4 inches that way. And then we're going to go back and do this diagonal lines right down the middle of your stitching. People seem to forget that horizontal and vertical cut. And they can't figure out why it didn't work. Okay, so you're going to end up with 8 of them. Okay, so don't forget that step. We're going to go ahead and square these up. And I press my seams towards my dark before I square it up. And then here's my patch squared up. Simple enough, right? We're going to go lay all our patches out. And you notice that I have 1 background square in that corner. And in the opposite corner, I have 1 dark square. This also creates, if you have many of these blocks, it creates a really interesting, sort of like an ocean waves looking block. Okay, and you I pressed all my seams on my first and third going this way, and on my second gets pressed that way, so when it's sewed, all those seams will lock together. All right? All right. Okay, the last one is eagle. Okay, so eagle, you're just going to go, this is a good chance for you to go through your scraps and just pick out 8 coordinating scraps, what you want to do. So we'll put that up. And I'll lay those out for you. I decided to put my stuff together with Wonder Clips too, so it doesn't get mixed up between that table over there and here. So I'm just going to lay them out to get an idea. And I'm keeping in the same order as I did the block just to make sure you guys I don't confuse you. Whoop. Oh, there's my little one. Okay, can you see I tried to put like these colors are similar in value, kind of the grayish colors. I put these blue across. That kind of spreads your colors out through your block. And we're actually going to make corner blocks, and then we're also going to make, which will be these 4 right here, and then these will be my side blocks. So I'm going to show you how to do the corner blocks first. So all we do is we have your background square and your corner, and we're going to sew those together, pressing your seams towards the background. And then from there, we're going to add on another bigger piece of background. And when I go to sew it together, I sew it so my seam goes down. I never want to fight those seams if I don't have to. Okay, so that's pretty easy on the corner. Here's what it looks like when it's done. Okay, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make our sides. Now the sides are a little different because this patch of colored fabric is going to go right in the middle of that patch. So I'm going to sew 2 backgrounds to the sides. So it looks like that. And then we'll go ahead and turn it 90 degrees and we'll sew our little sides on. And it looks like that. And what you can do once you get both of these kinds of patches done, if you want to take like your 3.5-inch fussy cut or something like that, you can go ahead and maybe just trim off any little sliver trims that you might have sitting around. Sometimes things go crooked. So here, let's lay the block out. So there's my corner in the top, then my right, and there's my hair tie. I was looking all over for my hair tie yesterday. There it is. Okay, and so there's this other side. Then you got your lower one. And I decided to put a fussy cut that actually is a directional fabric, just to show you, you need to pay attention that it goes up in your block. Okay, that's what that little succulent's there for. And this is another little fussy cut. It doesn't really have a direction, but you can do that. And then you just, when you sew your patches together, here are your rows. Like this. Okay, I pressed these seams towards the corners and this towards the middle. And then those seams will all lock together for you. Alrighty, well, I hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you next month.